Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds rereading Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series. From book 1 to book 16 million, we'll be uncovering every secret connection there is to find. Today we are joined by Swiggity Swoo.
I am the mountains that crush, and the swiggity that swoos.
Kay.
It's the Sanderlanche.
Yes, it is. I'm ReaderWarrior, and today we are joined by the very special guest, Jofwu.
Yeah. Hey, my name is Joshua. I'm from 17th Shard, Reddit, and several other places, and I love these books, so happy to talk about them.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. And today we're going to be talking about Mistborn, Hero of Ages, Part 5, Trust, Chapter 69 to 73. We get a lot of answers in these chapters.
It's the beginning of the end.
Final 100 pages. So we're going to jump straight in with Chapter 69. The question remains, where did the original prophecies about the Hero of Ages come from? I know now that Ruin changed them, but did not fabricate them. Who first taught that a hero would come? One who would be an emperor of all mankind, yet be rejected by his own people. Who first stated he would carry the future of the world on his arms, or that he would repair that which had been sundered? And who decided to use the neutral pronoun, so that we wouldn't know if the hero was a woman or a man? Anything on that part? I don't know, this one seems kind of obvious.
In hindsight, but going through like your first time, I can see this being a big question.
I guess the question to me would be like where, like the prophecies came from preservation, but like how did he like seed those? Maybe is the interesting or the kind of the mystery to me.
Thanks. I just feel. Sorry.
I was saying, and also like, how did preservation disseminate that information? Like, how did it become well known that this was what was supposed to happen?
Were there prophets of preservation at one point, or who knows?
Like, how far ahead did they see?
Yeah.
Preservation saw really far into the future.
I mean, he must have seen into at least the last 1,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and wasn't it Hadek in Kay's chapter comments the prophecies were old even before them, or something along that line? So we can round up to maybe like 1,500, because if we know the power kind of recycles after 1,000 years, so Ruin is trapped by preservation. 1,000 years happens, then Rashek. So any 500 to 1,000 years before then.
I would guess that he put the prophecies in place before he even planned to trap Ruin, because of the fact that he had to use his consciousness. We know that preservation used his consciousness to form the prison, so he had to set everything in motion before he imprisoned Ruin.
But we've seen a little bit that he still has some, so I would think, and like telling the people and having them all write it down and talk about it before you capture the god seems kind of like putting the horse in front of the cart, putting the cart in front of the horse. One of those. Because Ruin can hear everything. I mean, that's what happens with Ellen later, is that Ruin can just hear anything. So if God tells a priest, like, hey, I'm going to trap my godly brother, and then he goes tell somebody else, like, Ruin can hear that.
He wasn't doing it outright saying that this was what the hero was supposed to do. We know that Ruin manipulated the prophecies themselves to make it so that the hero was supposed to go to the well to release the power, to not use it. So I don't know.
I feel that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just if you're going through this the first time, you don't exactly know like what all preservation has access to or what they would be capable of. And so, regardless of whether or not you figured it out, that was a big question I had of just being like, who actually did write this? But we should move on to the meat of the chapter.
Yes. So Marsh is waiting in the ash, reflecting on Vin and his last meeting. He had no control except when Vin took control of him. A moment when Ruin became scared. Ruin returns and directs Marsh elsewhere. Later, he comes to find a man making his way through the ash, Goradel. Marsh attacks, and although Goradel does hold him off for a bit, he is no match for an Inquisitor with Ferochemy. In his last moments of life, Goradel tries to destroy the sheet of metal with Spook's message, but it was too late. Yes, it's Scoop from Bob the Builder. He was there the whole time. At Ruin's command, Marsh reads Spook's message aloud, for the god cannot see what is inscribed in metal. Marsh tries to fight it, but Ruin soothes/riots him into reading it. He reads about the events of Urteau and how Spook was spiked, but was now freed from the control. Be careful, Vin. Quote, don't trust anyone pierced by metal. Even the smallest bit can taint a man. Marsh crumbles the metal and leaves it and Goradel ruined in the ash.
Nice.
Poor Goradel.
Yeah, I will go under our...
Are you putting him under the honorary crew members?
Yeah, and I'm also going to add him to lost crew members.
Sure, why not?
I actually can't edit that one. That one's K's.
Personally, I'm glad that it wasn't Spook, so thanks to Goradel for taking him for the team. Honestly.
I feel bad for Marsh. Like, I don't know, he's just had such like a rough time that I don't know. He was only trying to help when he got into this. This is where it's come to.
Yeah.
Killing Ska. Yeah.
Killing Ska as an Inquisitor tool.
At least in these chapters, it doesn't. Well, we'll see how it pans out. But like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Earlier, we saw him just sitting, getting covered by ash, just trying to like basically build up willpower.
I also thought it was interesting that in this chapter that, like, this is when Marsh realizes that Ruin can't see things that are written in metal.
Yep.
It's also kind of funny that he needs to be told that people spiked are influenced by Ruin. Like, that's what he is.
Well, okay, yes, it is kind of funny. This is coming from the guy with like 20, but also...
Like, oh, really? You hadn't figured that out?
Maybe you didn't realize that even like a small bit can still be hemalurgically charged. Like, he's only been dealing with like railroad spikes.
Right, and his kind of control is very different. You could see somebody who's being influenced by Ruin and not even know it because, they're just seeing like something small. Whereas an Inquisitor, that's kind of a whole other thing, let's just say.
Yes.
Well, it's also cluing him in on like specifically that her earring is a spike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we will talk about that
Yeah.
on Swiggity's chapter because boy, do I have a rant about that.
Sounds exciting. This is probably I'm like catching up on this mid book, and I don't know if I would have thought of this. Tell me if this has something that's already happened before, but I noticed that Ruin like uses emotional allomancy on Marsh here. Mm-hmm. Is that something that we've seen him like specifically do? Like, has it been described as like he's using like those abilities on somebody, Ruin?
We've kind of seen it in the other chapters with Marsh, where he's been kind of like forced to see things a certain way and to feel a certain way about the world. But
Like,
I don't think we've
when
ever
he's giddy to
mentioned.
see all of the blood and carnage as like
Yeah,
carnival popcorn.
but I don't think we've ever actually drawn that connection before, that he is using, that it is like emotional allomancy that
Yeah.
he's using.
Because it's sort of like Ruin has to put him in the right state of mind in order to make him speak these words aloud.
Hmm.
That kind of makes sense because if Vin was theoretically strong enough, it seemed like she could have taken over his mind in the same way that she does to the Koloss, like in the previous
She
chapter.
almost did.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes sense that she could do that. It would be the same kind of power.
Yep. Anything else for chapter 69?
I guess just how bleak it is. Like,
Yeah.
Reading like later Sanderson, I appreciate the more edgy stuff he wrote in this period.
This was definitely, yeah, his more edgy, bleak kind of outlook on life kind of stuff.
I'm like, poor Gorodo, like, he did not deserve this.
He really didn't.
No.
No.
But rather him than Spook. Totally in agreement.
Yeah. Okay. Reader, do you want to move on to the next chapter?
Yes. Chapter 70. So I'm not going to read the full one, but we do learn for certain, we talked about it previously, that Quellion was spiked. We now learn that he placed it himself. It was bronze. It did make him a seeker. And this allowed him to find and blackmail different Allomancers in Arto. The point, however, is that people with unstable personalities were more susceptible to Ruin's influence, even if they didn't have a spike in them. That, indeed, is likely how Zane got his spike.
I just have to wonder, like, what kind of state of mind do you have to be in that, like, you think it's reasonable to take this spike of metal, kill someone with it, and then stab it into yourself? Like, what?
A hemalurgic state of mind.
Well, I think, first of all, you have to not be thinking clearly. Like, there is you being insane, and then there's Ruin affecting your insanity. Because we saw with the Koloss, and even with Marsh, like, Ruin cannot control perfectly when you're acting with emotions, purely on that. But that is sort of how he gains control. What?
So you're speaking of like the blood frenzy that Marsh was in, which kind of deteriorated Ruin's control on him?
Yes.
I was wondering about that, yeah.
Yes. Sorry. So emotions both give Ruin control, but also kind of take it away from him. Logic, we saw with why am I blanking? Yeoman. Logic, Ruin does not work well with, because he's changing a person's emotions. So an insane person acting without thinking, but being steered by Ruin, is close to what a spike person is.
I can see that. I mean, that stands to reason then that an insane person would be a lot easier to influence with emotional allomancy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's kind of what we were saying earlier about the.
I want a story of an insane rioter going out and making everybody act like he does, as insane as him.
Well, there's a lot of mentally unstable people on Roshar.
Yeah, but they all get a flying therapist to join them, so. Okay. Ellen and Yeoman, rulers of opposite beliefs, march throughout the city as equals. Ellen has them meeting with soldiers and inspecting weapons, while Yeoman wishes to be focused on practicality, referring to books that Ellen is all too familiar with. They head towards the infirmary as Ellen comments on Yeoman's lack of experience. Yeoman was like Ellen before all of this. Ellen explains how emotions can turn the tide of a battle and help your army be victorious. He comments about how he's a mixture of many things and that not all of those things are equal. They reach the infirmity. Wow, I'm really tired today. They reach the infirmary and split up. Yeoman talking to hospital officials as Ellen walks among the wounded. himself, but is thankful that he didn't attack with the Colossus. A young boy shaking from mist sickness is brought in. Ellen watches him spasm, seems to recognize the pain for a moment. He walks to Yeoman and asks him about the strange statistic, the 16 rule that Hammond and him had discovered. Yeoman doesn't know nor seem to care. 16 was an important number for the Lord Ruler's religion, saying it was the number of the original Inquisitors, and, to Ellen's shock, the number of allomantic metals. Ellen pauses at this, saying that there are 14. Yeoman disagrees and explains that they came in sets alloys of 2 and in groups of 4, physical, mental, enhancement, and temporal, and that there are 2 missing. Surprised by this information, but unsure of its usefulness, Ellen turns back to the mist-sick boy. He remembers being in pain like that when his father tried to snap him. Ellen jumps up and asks if there are any Mistfallen in the room. A soldier raises his hand, and Ellen gives him a vial of metals. He swallows them, then, to Ellen's shock, burns it. The mists were snapping people, bringing them to the doors of death, only to awaken their latent allomantic powers. Ruin's assault begins, and Ellen orders every Mistfallen to swallow any metals left in the city. They had a second army this whole time, and, hopefully, it would be able to take out the Colossus.
I wonder if I wonder if to the whole Straff poison situation was like subtle foreshadowing for the mist sickness.
What do you mean?
Well, it's kind of like explaining the idea of taking something harmful, but like making you stronger. Like he was on this drug in that second book, but he eventually chose to keep taking it even afterwards. And like it made him, it was like the slow kind of degradation of like its effects upon him. I don't know if you guys remember that.
I do remember. I don't think I follow, sorry. I'm not seeing the connection there.
I get what you're saying, Swiggity. I just don't think I agree with it.
Like it's weird. At the end he like gets poisoned by Amarita and he has to take this cocktail of all different antidotes, and he's just hoping that one of them will be the right one, and he ends up surviving from it. I think, yeah, because obviously that's not what kills him. Vin does with a huge sword.
Yeah.
But I guess it wouldn't be a literal connection, just more of like a symbolic kind of foreshadowing, rhyming theme.
Possibly. Yeah, I don't think
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's foreshadowing. I would say that it's possibly a theme that Sanderson has, whereas like saying that something that you think is a bad thing, it can actually be a good thing in the end. I think that's definitely a theme in Sanderson's books that he has.
Okay.
I'm thinking of like a counterexample, but it's off in Stormlight Land. It's maybe he likes playing with it in both directions. So.
Yeah.
But we do get one of the big reveals about the mists. I feel so stupid for not piecing it together on my first read through.
Well, it's like you had to know that it was doing something, that the mist was probably doing something to these people. Like, there had to be a reason for why it was attacking these people. But it's kind of hard to guess that it was snapping people and making people have allomantic powers. I feel like that's kind of a difficult one to guess.
Yeah.
I probably should have learned my lesson after like Well of Ascension with like the prophecies, but I don't think I was quite reading like closely enough, because I just see these numbers, you know, it's like 16% of people, and it's like, what does like all this mean? Like I wasn't like trying to pick out exactly what this means. It was just kind of like, okay, there's like numbers, we'll see what that means later.
Yeah, my first time reading these, I definitely skipped all of the epigraphs every single time because I just wanted to get to the story. I was also in middle school at the time, so like,
But we also get the reveal that apparently there are 2 other metals out there.
I also want to continue. I just want to quick because I had thought of this and I'd forgotten to say it to link back with the 16. Is that not only is Yeoman saying that 16 is a powerful number within his church, previously when we were talking to Doxson,
Demu.
not Doxson, Demu, they both start with D, get them confused in my head. Demu, he was talking about how 16 was important for the Church of the Survivor as well. So that number 16 continues to pop up, which is interesting.
And it's nice that it wasn't just in one religion, is that both have it. And I'm willing to bet that if we ever looked at any other religions or any other key people, there are probably more pop-ups of this statistical anomaly.
There are that's probably like part of why it's tricky, right? Is because you don't know about this, like the other 2 metals. Like it's been like hammered into your brain. There's 8 metals. There's 8 metals, and at the very end of Final Empire, there's a couple more, and then all the way up to this point, it's still kind of like, there's like maybe a couple more, but you're not like piecing together. Okay, there's 4x4. There's 16, and so I guess I don't know that the association with the Allomancers is quite there unless you really are digging.
Yeah.
He's pretty. I was just curious that there are like a couple of like fun mentions of 16 in the previous books, but it's not usually to the Allomancers.
Nope.
There's like little things like Vin is 16 years old, and there's.
Kelsier spent 16 years, 16 months in the pits.
Yeah.
But also, like, this is how many people were either half Ska or descendants from half Ska. Because, like, all these people have to have the nobility allomantic gene.
No, I don't think so.
Well, because allomancy only exists because of the Lord Ruler.
The mists are different, though.
Okay, we can talk about that in Spoiler Realm. I understand what you're saying.
I'm fairly certain the mists are different, but...
We can talk about that in the Spoiler Realm, just to be safe. Anything else?
That does seem like a really spoilery topic.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, but I've been pretty sure before, so just to be on the safe side.
All right,
Anything else for chapters? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are we on now?
71.
71.
Okay, let me take my book out. So, again, in the epigraph, we're talking about that number 16. And that was Preservation's way to communicate that there was something weird going on. Was this number 16 was continually making this number 16 pop up in these places. Also, in this epigraph, it does say that Preservation knew before he imprisoned Ruin that he wouldn't be able to communicate with humankind once he diminished himself. So he set all of this stuff in place before he imprisoned Ruin, like I said earlier, confirmed in my epigraph.
Okay, wait. No. He could set up the rules of the universe, but that doesn't mean he gave them the prophecies.
Quote, he left clues that couldn't be altered.
The 16 thing. The 16 were clues. The 16 stuff are the clues. The prophecies are, the message. Prophecies are not clues. The prophecies are, here's what you have to do.
Also, my point of the fact that it says in here that he wouldn't be able to communicate with humankind. after he imprisoned Ruin, so how could he have given them the prophecies if he wasn't able to communicate with them?
I just think the narrator is wrong on that part. I'm gonna double check that. Just to be sure.
Reader's upset because he wants to be right about this when he knows that I am correct.
No.
Well,
Okay.
then he'd have 3 points.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a good chance ruined. Like there was a moment when there were maybe a year. I don't know how much is mental deterioration to a god, where he could have been like, write down these prophecies. Because if he had told them about it before they captured Ruin, then Ruin would be like, hey, what are you planning? What's that knife doing behind your back?
Or if he could have also just laid them out in a way that made Ruin not think anything of them, because he probably like set multiple prophecies in place. So like which ones? Who knows?
I don't know. I feel like there's one prophecy.
I don't know. So in this chapter, since I have made my point.
You made your point doesn't mean it hit its mark.
Sazed is talking to the first generation of Kandra, and they're continuing to go through the differences between what Ruin changed versus what was actually true. And Sazed is very convinced that he's like, all of these are referencing to Vin. I believe that she is the one who is the hero of ages, even according to the unaltered ones, not just the ones that I know that are altered. But there are some things that he's a little bit confused about as well, that are bothering him. That he's like, like this doesn't quite make sense because maybe it's something that hasn't happened yet. And they talk about Ruin and preservation as the gods who created mankind, and Sazed is kind of thinking to himself, he's like, this is all the same as the other religions that I've already proven to be false. Like, it's reiterating other things. And one of the Kandra, essentially, he tells him, like, it sounds like you're looking for a religion that doesn't require belief, which is impossible. You're looking for something that doesn't exist. If you don't believe in something, it can't really be a religion. You have to believe that it is worth it to happen. You have to believe that this is something that is being caused by your god.
It's not faith, it's fact.
But Sazed needs to have faith, which is what he's lost, and he's trying to search for a religion that you don't have to have faith.
Mm-hmm.
So they also go on to talk about how preservation, about the bodies of preservation and Ruin, and it comes to a head that all of the preservation had hidden Ruin's body somewhere. And the Kandra look over at the trust and they allow Sazed to go and open it. And inside is all of the Atium that we have been looking for this entire time. That is Ruin's body that he has been searching for. The rest of his power the Atium has been gathered by and kept by the Kandra. right next to the pits of Hathsin, and as they say, like most of the Atium never left the pits.
Where it all began.
That there was an elaborate scheme where there were certain obligators who would secretly break open the geodes within a metal-lined room to secretly take the Atium out, and so that the geodes and the empty geodes would be sent to Luthadel, and they would secretly place the actual pieces of Atium within piles of other coins, so that it would be mixed in with everything else, so that Ruin wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And it's a whole convoluted plot to make sure that Ruin didn't know where this Atium was going. And the Lord Ruler only let out a very, very small amount of Atium. Small enough that he knew that all of the Mistborn would burn it up fairly quickly. So that it would be burned and used up, so it wouldn't be loose in the world for whenever Ruin might get released. So he wouldn't be able to find it.
So in other words, Rashik really had this all figured out.
Yeah.
He tried to. Yeah, it goes back to like that, like when he dies and what does he say? You don't know what I do for you, or whatever.
You don't
like,
know what I do for mankind.
Yeah.
By killing me, you have doomed us all.
Yeah.
Especially when he was probably so close to taking the power again.
Yeah, he knew what was going to come up in the next couple of years.
Can you imagine that? 1,000 years go by, you're like, okay, I just have to do this one thing.
Let's just do this one thing. And then a girl shows up and ruins everything.
And
Kelsier guy's really stirring up trouble. I don't like this.
Ruin outmaneuvered him.
Just one more week.
So, continuing on with this chapter, we switch to Tensoon. So, Tensoon has been he's trying to get to Fadric City, to where he knows that Vin is, because he knows for sure that that's where she is. And he gets to the top of this hill, and he's just outside of Luthadel. He's not that far away from the pits of Hassan. And he gets to the top, and he sees a river of lava in front of him. And at the top of Mount Tyrion has blown off. The ash mount closest to Luthadel has blown off, and there's a river of lava blocking his path. And he just gets so dismayed, because he's like, I am never going to reach her time. And he kind of just lays down for a second, because he's just upset.
Is Ruin trying to do we think Ruin's trying to slow him down, or is this just Ruin destroying the planet and this just happened to...
Ruin, I think this is Ruin just destroying the planet, because I think... Because we know that Ruin is able to control creatures who have spikes in them, I think if he knew that Tensoon was there, he would have tried to take control of Tensoon. Because we know that Tensoon has spikes in him. Instead of trying to just put a river of lava in his place.
Yeah. There's something to say about that, but it might be a spoiler thing, so we can come back to it.
Okay.
Make sure to write it down.
Yeah.
Going back to the original point of view, so first of all, I find it kind of weird that the first generation refers to the Lord Ruler as Father too.
I mean, it's similar to your parents referring to each other as mom and dad in front of their kids, and then just getting into that habit.
I was taking my note. I was writing my note down to bring the other thing up. Who calls him father?
The first generation also calls Rashek father, even though they were best friends 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
They also call the other Kandra children. see, which I thought was a nice touch.
I guess to them he'll always be like above because of where he's come. I mean, I guess maybe there's not a literal reason for it, but they just see him as that now, like because he gave them their whole society,
Yeah.
despite his roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He he pretty much. Wow.
He's just Papa Rashik.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you think Sazed kind of gets his faith back in this chapter?
No.
Mhm.
I think he's starting down the right path, but he's not quite there yet.
He found there was a new religion, got excited that, realized, hey, it's kind of like the same as all the others, but now is faced with the fact I can't just look for truth. I have to find faith. And so in the next 9 chapters, he's got to solve that issue.
So it's
9
opening.
chapters.
It's almost like he's hitting that like point where he's finally realizing that the deeper issue, right? Like, because that's exactly what he does. He thinks like, oh, I finally found the true religion, and then it's the same story over and over again. And this time he's realized as he hit this point, instead of kind of hitting a low point, he realizes, okay, there's a deeper underlying question here that I'm avoiding by just looking for a correct religion.
Exactly.
Well said.
Do you think when Sazed runs over, puts on his metal mines, that the first were kind of a little bit jealous of that?
I don't know, because they've been without it for so long.
But I feel like this was a magic they had for their human lives, and now
Yeah.
that was kind of forced away.
No, it wasn't forced. They chose. They made the decision.
Certainly would
They
have
were
been
given
cool
the option.
if they had acknowledged it, though, right?
Yeah. Well, what were the other options? Rashik's like, I can turn you into goo, or what?
Yeah, I don't remember super well, but it seems like it wasn't like, oh, there wasn't a lot of great options left to them.
Well,
Yeah.
he asked them if they would be willing to do this. Like,
He granted us
But, like-
immortality in the form of a goo.
He's like, hey, either you become goo and then I lay bag, or you become goo and that's it.
who's to say if his friends said no that he would have still turned them into goo or not? Maybe he wouldn't have.
All the other
Maybe
ones
he would
into
have done
goo?
something else. Maybe he would have done something else.
He was paranoid about terrorist people to the point of, destroying his entire people. Like,
Maybe he set them up on an island in the south somewhere, far away from all of this. Secret society.
yeah.
So you don't want to be goo? Fine, I'll make this place for you.
Rashik hasn't given me like a lot of great like reasons to like think that he has like people's best like in mind.
Mm-hmm. And like, he was barely able to like move the planet and solve thousands of issues. I don't think he's making a that's a haven.
Well, no, because by this time he was at the end where he had gotten much better control over his powers.
But he
over the
also didn't have
powers.
as much power left.
He did not have as much power left. That is true.
Thank you. And then I got 2 more things. One is they put Atium in bags of coins. So can Ruin see his metal then?
I think that Ruin would be able to distinguish. I think Ruin is able to distinguish between Atium and other metals.
Mm-hmm.
But not if they're not next to each other. I think if Atium is mixed in with other metals, like he can't distinguish which is the other metal, which is atium.
Would he be able to extinguish regular metals from malatium then, which is an alloy of atium?
I would think so, because it is it might be like one of the next chapter or two. It might be an annotation on one of these chapters, but I think that there's a comment that atium and malatium are both like very closely tied to ruin. I think there's enough of him in it that he would see it the same way as atium.
Yeah. He might be like, whoa, that's weird.
I mean, you get to the I don't know if you guys have talked about this on the show, but there's like the whole atium like retcon thing that Brandon's kind of toyed with, that he may or may not. So if you subscribe to, if that happens, then there's also that wrinkle. But
okay, most likely he would be able to recognize like an alloy, though, considering it's still.
Yeah, was the point? So I'm trying to like piece together what was the goal of hiding the atium in the coins? Because I almost wonder, were they trying to make Ruin think that there was more atium in that had left than there actually had? Like, if they're hiding the coins, does Ruin think like, oh, look, they're shipping all this metal, this must all be atium?
I think it was that because I think that the geodes still have the trace of atium in them, so I think that possibly it might be that those are indistinguishable from the atium itself. So the geodes were to convince Ruin that there was more atium that had traveled to Luthadel than there actually was, and hiding the atium, the actual atium within the coins, was to prevent him from figuring out how much that there was actually less atium that was traveling.
And then, if you guys remember all the way back to the Final Empire, Cayman was planning on snaking somebody in to steal a I forget what the term is. Oh shoot, let me check
a shipment.
A shipment that would have had the beads of atium in the coin patches. So, and now that we know about the spike, Ruin would have figured that out all the way back then, saw through the ruse. But it's weird to think, if Cayman's scheme had gone through, that would have completely blown away the whole atium reveal all the way back that long ago.
Cut out a little bit, sorry.
The whole atium being hidden among coins, all of that would have been revealed all the way back then.
Part of me thinks that like it's surprising that never happened over the last 1,000 years, that somebody didn't like screw up and steal one of these shipments. That said, Cayman didn't really get very close, did they? Like the Steel Ministry was like right on top of him.
Yeah, they had no chance. But like,
but yeah, it's a fun what if.
But basically, what you're saying is they would have looked in there, and instead of it being coins, it would be.
Well, there would have been coins, but then they pull them out there, and then suddenly there's atium, and they're like, "Whoa, that's weird." And then Ruin,
they probably honestly wouldn't have thought much about it. They would have just been, "Oh, look, my lucky day! Someone mixed a piece of atium in with these other coins."
Well, would they even have known about atium?
I feel like they must have, because it's like it's not like a big secret. Like atium's a very valuable thing, right?
Yeah, but Vin didn't really know about atium, and it was so controlled by nobility. Like, I don't even think.
I think she knew that it existed, but she didn't know what it was.
No. So
I would think that Cayman would be like in the know enough to know, like, oh, this is an incredibly valuable metal.
Yeah, I see that. I believe that. Or he'd take it to somebody who would be able to identify it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At some point, somewhere, like if they like are trying to sell all this stuff that they've taken, right? Somebody would have been like, "That's atium. Where did you get this from?" And then there would be questions, and people, it would.
And
I think it would
Inquisitors
come
would
out.
show up and they would all die. For all we know, people did steal, and that they just cut.
That is cool to think about, though. That's really, really cool.
Yep. Swiggity, I believe you have the next chapter.
All right.
The big one.
The big one.
The big one.
Yes, there are 16 medals. I find it highly unlikely that the Lord Ruler did not know of them all. Indeed, the fact that he spoke of several on the plaques and the storage caches meant that he knew of at least those. I must assume that he did not tell humankind of them earlier for a reason. Perhaps he held them back to give a secret edge, much as he held back the single nugget of preservation's body that made men into Mistborn. Or perhaps he decided that humankind had enough power in the 10 medals they already understood. Some things we shall never know. Part of me still finds what he did regrettable. During the 1,000-year reign of the Lord Ruler, how many people were born, snapped, lived, and died never knowing what they were, mistings, simply because their medals were unknown. Of course, this did give us a slight advantage at the end. Ruin had a lot of trouble giving duralumin to his inquisitors, since they'd need an allomancer who could burn it to kill before they could use it. And since none of the duralumin mistings in the world knew about their power, they didn't burn it and reveal themselves to Ruin. That left most inquisitors without the power of duralumin, save for a few important cases, such as Marsh, where they got it from a Mistborn. This was usually considered a waste, for if a Mistborn was killed with hemalurgy, only one of their 16 powers could be drawn out and the rest would be lost. Ruin deemed it much better to try to subvert them and gain access to all of their powers.
Okay. Two things. One, being a duralumin or aluminum misting sucks.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
Can't do anything. Two, would they even... Is there even like a duralumin or an aluminum?
Aluminum misting?
Like a Mistborn burning aluminum. Because would there even be something to seek?
I think there would, but I think it would just be like a very brief flash. It's not like a sustained like pulse, like you get with the other powers, right? It would just be like a boom.
Ah,
Yeah,
I was
because it would
envisioning
immediately extinguish your metals, right? You would burn it and then
Yeah.
It's gone.
So it's not like you can continually burn. I mean, a misting that can only burn duralumin can literally just do duralumin. Can they?
Yeah.
I think so.
So maybe that has a pulse, but I always envisioned it like if you burn duralumin and it just makes the pulsations get louder. Like that's how I always saw it. And that aluminum would just like turn the volume to 0.
I would say my understanding is that duralumin would have a pulse of its own, accompanying the other metals that are burned with it. If that makes sense. So, like, if you're also burning steel and you do duralumin, right? You're going to have the steel is going to go boom really loud because all that steel that you had is now compressed and you're using a lot at once. So you're going to have a really loud steel pulse. But I think that the duralumin would have like a pulse of its own. I just think it would be very like a brief, sharp, all in one go.
Well,
Okay.
not because for duralumin, it doesn't get burned out all the way. When you use it with the other metal, it only burns out the other metal. You still have the duralumin after you've burned away the other metals.
So is somebody who burns aluminum still capable of burning aluminum afterwards? It just wipes all the others?
Yes, I think so.
I actually thought that I thought that you burn aluminum. I thought it burned it all itself out, but I'm
Me too.
not 100% confident.
It might. The only time we've seen someone burn aluminum was in book 1 when Vin burned it on accident when she didn't know what was happening. Well, when she was forced to burn it.
I was going to say.
Not really on
And
accident.
Vin usually just replenishes other metals, not duralumin. So.
From what I
Well,
understand.
that was specifically stated was that there is a part that is stated in book 2 where Vin makes a comment about how her Duralumin was still there, but the other metals were gone.
So we're saying that if you burn Duralumin, it doesn't like completely burn away all your Duralumin?
Correct. I think so.
Doesn't necessarily.
That makes sense.
Just the metal that you burned with it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. Guess it's my turn to do a summary. Sorry. So, chapter 72, it ends where it all began. Vin returns to Luthadel as rain begins to pour. The city is on fire and abandoned, the vast emptiness emboldened by feverish fires that no one tries to put out. If Ruin believed her about having the Atium before, that time has come to pass. The Dark God gloats to Vin as Inquisitors slowly encircle her. All part of the plan. If you can call a painful death by spiky bastards a plan. I did love this scene. It's just like Vin coming back to Luthadel after all this time, and rain is pouring down, and it's on fire, and just she's got her old mist cloak that Kelsier gave her.
It would
Yeah.
be really cool if this ever was done in an adaptation to have this her coming back to Great Shaw in the rain be a mirror of when she went to Great Shaw in the rain with Kelsier.
Yeah, totally.
I'm frozen. So you show okay, so in the Final Empire when Vin and Kelsier did their raid on Krennic Shaw, Vin's hunt, she's got her hood up, she's keeping in Kelsier's shadow the entire time. Flash forward to now, they're at the same street, same camera movement, but Vin is now standing tall, the hood is down, no Kelsier. This whole chapter is cinematic in my mind, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This would be amazing wallpaper if nothing else. Although once severely injured by a single Inquisitor on a similarly rain-drenched night, Vin now faces 13 of the hemalurgically enhanced warriors, alone. However, once you have a task, it is better to do it than live with the fear of it. As Vin fights the vile creatures, now empowered with abilities of Allomancy and Ferrochemy, it is only creative use of Duralumin and her sheer tenacity that keeps her from being slaughtered. Before long, her neck is bleeding and she is out of metal vials. Daggers shattered upon cobblestones, rain continues to weep as lightning flashes against the sky. Burning her final vial of metal, Vin flies amongst the very spires of Krennic Shaw, closely tailed by angry Inquisitors. Barely holding on, she manages poetically to impale an Inquisitor on one of the massive spikes that composes the eerie palace, ultimately decapitating him as she falls to the ground, just as Kelsier decapitated the Inquisitor in the Final Empire. She is soon grabbed by 4 of them and uses the last of her pewter and steel in a Duralumin push to free herself, exposing herself to incredible pain with no pewter. With nothing left to burn, Marsh soon closes in on her, bringing back a tempest of past trauma. She is once again powerless and in trouble. Marsh shatters her leg bone and Ruin begins to interrogate her as Marsh, puppet of Ruin, begins to torture her. All the while, she pleads with the mists to assist her once more. Marsh, do we want to say anything about this before I move on?
So I like how the Inquisitors, sort of like Kelsier in the first book, are just don't even care about being seen. They're not burning copper.
Do the Inquisitors even have access to copper? Because they wouldn't necessarily have to.
No, but considering that Rashek really liked using Mistborn for Inquisitors, I'm
But
guessing
not
some
all.
do.
Yeah, but not all Inquisitors are Mistborn. So,
No.
did he even bother to give them a spike for copper?
Probably not.
They all I think they all have different abilities, right? some have some things and some have another. Like they all have bronze pretty much, right? And they all have steel. But I think there's like a couple of them that they might have copper, or they might have something else.
For some reason, I was
don't
thinking that all of the Inquisitors that the Lord Ruler made were all the same, all had the same powers. It wasn't until Ruin was free that he started adding spikes to the Inquisitors so that now they're not all the same. Now they might have different powers.
I kind of got to side with Kay on that one. I think he made them pretty formulaic.
Because he only had knowledge of a certain number of bind points for hemalurgy.
So you think Rashik's Inquisitors were mainly Seekers to begin with?
Yeah.
Well, either Seekers or /Mistborn. Those were the two that they tried to use to make Inquisitors so that they could have that heightened bronze.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if they were made out of a Mistborn, they would be able to burn copper?
Yeah. But my question was, would Rashik have even given, if they weren't a Mistborn, would he have even bothered to give them copper? Because, like, he didn't really want his Inquisitors to hide.
Just of a spike, I think. Like, Marsh is basically, in chess terms, Ruin's queen. Super powerful, does everything, basically. Like, there's no point in restricting him to some pawn rule that you can only attack corner-wise.
I'm trying to find. Coppermine does say that they had all 4 mental powers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to find the source for it, and I'm not seeing it. So.
Dang, those Coppermine people screwing us over at every step. We don't like those people.
We don't use them.
Yeah, we never invite those guys on.
For those who don't know, 17th Shard runs the Coppermind.
And our lovely guest is a member of the 17th Shard, and one of those. For them.
Straight from Silverlight.
Yep.
We get a glimpse.
I was going to add. It says they have 4 bronze spikes between the ribs, which is great. One grading zinc, brass, copper, and bronze. But so I think that's the case. But
you can't find the source.
It says Hero of Ages Chapter 5, but I can't easily go pull that up. And
well, lucky for you, the 3 of us can.
Well, we'll leave it alone for now. I don't think it's that important of a detail. Yeah. I was just...
I mean, it is cool detail in terms of them not burning it if they have it. Like
2 steel, 4 bronze, pewter.
Yeah.
So they have 4 bronze spikes, and I guess the logic is that's the bronze does those 4 different things. It does mental, allomancy. So I guess theoretically they could have like doubled up on one, like they could have doubled up on something else. But
like when you do a skill tree, you don't level up every single one to 1 and then to 2. Like you'll pick one you really want and like take that one to 5 or something. Skyrim rules. We get a glimpse of what it would have been like if Spook hadn't realized he was being manipulated, because Luthadel is
rough.
Pretty rough. Worse off than what it was when Rashik was in charge.
It's looking a little worse for wear.
They really let the neighborhood go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the neighborhood's really gone downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to mentally skip over all the torture scenes because that's hard to read.
This is our baby. For every bone broken in this chapter.
Oh, jeez. Because this is our baby girl. We've watched her grow up these last 3 books. And then Marsh being forced to do this.
Marsh, her pseudo uncle.
Exactly.
I know it is.
Speaking of
probably as
pseudo
dark
uncles,
as it
Swiggity.
gets, right? Like,
Exactly.
out of all of these books, this is like as dark as it gets.
Speaking of pseudo uncles, Swiggity, you want to do the next point of view?
Marsh exults in his destruction of our hero Vin. The influence Ruin has on him controlling his very essence. Until, in a flash of resistance, Marsh remembers his past. He remembers the Ska Rebellion and how Kelsier had cared for Vin as a daughter. He remembers the conversation he had with this girl. He realizes the importance of the message Goradel had been sent to deliver, beware anyone pierced by a metal, and without thinking rips Vin's earring from her. In an instant, Ruin's voice was extinguished. The pain began to flee from Vin's body. The mists began to swirl around her. She felt a familiar comfort and strength from the mists, one she hasn't felt since the Well of Ascension, of course. A voice whispers in her head. It's the same power, after all, solid in the metal fed to Ellen, liquid in the pool and vapor in the air, confined tonight, hiding you, protecting you, giving you power. As Marsh swings his axe for a final death blow, Vin catches his arm, staying his blade.
I don't know where to begin. When Brandon writes The Power of Love Saves the Universe, he writes it good. Because that is what saves Vin.
The power of Marsh's love.
It really is, though. He thinks back, and, like, I love going back through, like, his whole life flashing before his eyes. And it even talks about his ultimate failure to see the Ska Rebellion through. And how he gave up just before Kelsier brought it to a victory.
You gotta, like, you see the flashes of, like, him as a child, like, inquisitors or obligators looking down on him. And then it cuts to, like, him picking up a sword, charging into, like, some kind of battle, or, like, rallying with other Ska, and then cuts to, like, him putting the sword down. Then cut to what we see in the Final Empire. From his point of view, like, Kelsier smiling, and then cut to Kelsier dead. Then cut to Mare, and, like, maybe a few things of Mare and them becoming together, ending on Mare leaving, going with Kelsier, and then cut to Vin. Because this is their child. Kelsier said it in the Final Empire. If he and Mare had had a kid, this is what she might have been like. And so he's now envisioning Mare into Vin. So as all that happens, we get the big reveal that blows my mind every single time, that I swear up and down is the greatest build-up, sprinkling, shoveling, dropping a truckload of... Oh my gosh, the earring was a spike the whole time.
I'm glad we can finally talk about it.
Yes. There's so much foreshadowing. It's like foreshadowing.
Like, even from the very beginning, right? Like when she fought the Lord Ruler and it got knocked out of her. It's just like, you don't think about it. It's just like, whoa, you blew her earring out. That's powerful.
Also, if we think back to the very beginning in Final Empire, the first time that Vin, right after Vin puts her earring in, it's Rain said in her mind.
You can't trust anyone, baby.
I would almost kind of want in that. So it's, you have the movie activates, goes from black to Ash falling from the sky. You have the prologue with Kelsier, and then it pans back up to Ash, goes back down with Ash, and you have Vin in her little cubbyhole, and she's got her hand outstretched in it, and the mist is sort of like dancing in it. Show, like, before she was wearing the spike, the mist thing with her. and then from then on, with the spike out, the mist never does. Have it be built in visually from scene 1. And like, I just, this blew my mind. I remember having to put down, I remember throwing the book, picking it up, slamming it on the desk, and screaming. Oh my god, every single detail was important. Those tiny little, the earring was a spike the whole time. Earring was a spike the whole time.
This is why I'm super excited for like Mistborn Era 3, because like Brandon wants to do the same sort of thing where he can like write the whole trilogy, at least like a first draft before he publishes them, to allow him to do stuff like that. Because it's, the amount of foreshadowing and planning for that is wild.
Yeah. And like, you've got Marsh finally only able to do like a brief finger twitch in the very beginning when he was just trying to kill himself. Now, to save Vin, who's literally being tortured by him, he's able to move his hand, rip that earring out in this blood frenzy. And then just... and he knows this because of Spook's message. So Spook's message still worked.
Mm-hmm. Spook's message reached its intended and necessary recipient. It reached the necessary recipient. It never needed to reach Vin. It needed to reach Marsh.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been nice if it reached Vin, and then like she could have just
just taken it off and then just I'm God now. Okay.
That ain't how it works.
But it worked. It worked this way.
Mm-hmm. But like, you can hear like Ruin, because imagine it's still in Marsh's viewpoint. You can hear Ruin suddenly scream no, because he's recognizing, oh no, the power of preservation, the god being who I had killed, is now returning into somebody with a conscious mind who's able to fight back.
Raider, I think what would be cooler is if start to hear no and then have it cut off in the middle of it when we switch to Vin's point of view.
Yes, but you hear no, cuts off, Marsh lifts up the axe, and then she catches it, and then triumphant play whatever the theme music or the song or whatever that is whenever they use like Allomancy. When she fought the Lord Ruler and won, play that, but hype it to 11. This is the Avengers Assemble moment. Have it be, this is the moment. The music is at its utmost peak. Vin is, as we see in the next chapter, the most powerful creature on the entire planet. Her Allomancy is arguably stronger than the Lord Ruler's was. Like, this is the moment.
How would you convey to the audience that it was a spike? Would you have like Marsh takes the earring out, throws it on the floor, and like for a second you don't think anything happened?
You have him hear the words of Spook, like, do not trust anything, do not trust anyone pierced in metal, or something. And then he looks down and sees the spike glittering. And now joining us, we have Dragon.
Dragon!
Hello.
Woo!
Dragon.
Welcome!
Welcome. We're just finishing up chapter 72.
Perfect.
A wild dragon.
Does a wild dragon appears? Anybody have anything else about 72 we would like to cover? Okay, no.
I think
73?
we're good to move on.
Yep. 73, our lovely guest Jofwu. You
73. Let me find it. So speaking of earrings, I love how these epigraphs, like every one in this like avalanche, right? Like it feels like the epigraph in the next chapter like comments on something that happened just in the first. And here you have it with the earring. I have spoken of Inquisitors and their ability to pierce copper clouds. As I said, this power is easily understood when one realizes that Inquisitors were Seekers before their transformation, and that meant that their bronze became twice as strong. There is at least one other case of a person who could pierce copper clouds, and in her case, however, the situation was slightly different. She was a Mistborn at birth, and her sister was a Seeker. He goes on to say that Vin's sister was a Seeker. The earring pierced her sister, took her sister's bronze powers, and that's why Vin, all this time, has been able to pierce copper clouds inexplicably since book 1. So, fantastic.
Mind blown. Vin
Love
was an Inquisitor the whole time. That's why she could do it.
That is brilliant to have that seated so early, not only in the books
Right.
but in the character's life.
Which
Yep.
I love. But one of the things I know we talked about in last episode a little bit, I think in the main section, is talked about also like the people who are somewhat stronger in metals seem to be able to overpower. So it's like kind of a question of, could Vin, even without the spike, since she was able to get more oomph from her metals, potentially have been able to still pierce copper clouds of weaker mistings without it? I know that was kind of a little bit of something that we brought up. And Jofwu, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that. Do you think there's like a certain threshold you have to be like X much stronger, or can you be like barely stronger and so you can pierce their copper cloud, or do you have to be like a certain magnitude level stronger, like 1.5 times stronger in order to pierce a copper cloud?
I think it would be the latter. My guess is that you'd have to be, that she would not have been able to without. There is certainly like some degree of little play there where like people have different power levels, but my gut is that from a Mistborn you still would need more than just to be extra strong. I think that like the threshold is that like order of magnitude difference. Not order of magnitude, but yeah.
Like a power
Yeah.
level.
But
Some sort of extra multiplier beyond just like a little bit.
And I think that
And
just because in this case, like in this epigraph, he's specifically saying, oh, it was like basically doubled.
Yeah.
And something I liked in the formatting of the epigraph is that it never refers to Vin by name. It strangely only refers to her as her.
But we all know it's Vin.
I mean, she just became God, so, so she's referring
Yes,
to
and-
Vin as before God Vin.
Well, right now Vin has not become God yet. Gotta wait.
She's
In
just
progress.
been the most. Yes.
In progress.
Loading.
She's just Super Saiyan, not Super Saiyan God mode.
Yeah, sure.
So before we get back to Vin, we get a few different scenes here, which I think is kind of a fun little like a montage of what's going on elsewhere. Right, we catch back up with Jin soon. He notices that the mists are not swirling chaotically as usual. They are moving toward Luthadel, and his hope is renewed. He turns back the direction that he was coming from. Alrianne calls Breeze to the window. He's up late working on a treaty. He goes to the window and sees that the mists are behaving very strangely. They're moving in one direction and accelerating. Spook suddenly bursts through the room and urges them to get everybody into the cavern at once. It's terribly urgent. Ham and Elend are defending Fadric City. The battle is not going very well. They notice the mists, but they have too much on their hands to really pay much attention. But suddenly, someone comes up and points out that the Koloss are retreating, and Elend pushes himself up above the armies and looks and sees that they are indeed retreating. And then the mists are headed towards Luthadel, as are the Koloss. Finally, back to Vin. And Vin is clearing her metals, but she has no metal in her stomach. She is simply being powered by the mists, as she was one time before when fighting the Lord Ruler. Every use of allomancy feels as if it is enhanced by Duralman, and fighting a dozen Inquisitors no longer seems like a challenge. She punches one and takes its axe, cuts off the head of a second, pulls out the ice spikes of a third, pushes the fourth to the ground so hard that its spikes come out, and then launches herself into the air, high above Creakshaw, above the mists, and looks out and sees all the mists swirling around the final empire, centered around herself, as the mists are kind of funneling towards her.
Which is it's just an amazing visualization, like that picture.
Yeah. I want to know like how high she is, because like she has launched herself.
I want to say cloud level. Like showcase like she is at extreme powers. Like show her like we talked about when Vin does her first Duralumin steel push, when she charges in to say breeze, that it's possible maybe there was like a sonic boom when she does that. Like have it be she just immediately does a sonic boom, ends up in the clouds, and then pulls herself back down, and have like another one or something.
God, that'd be so beautiful. I love how it says it's like empire wide.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
I wonder if anyone's made like done it. I know people have done a lot of Cosmere art, but has anyone done an art of Vin with the clouds, with the mist swirling in, and like the stars above her? Because it talks about the stars above her and then the mists below.
Yes, there definitely is. I would have to find it. I've definitely seen it, and it's really cool to see.
Nice. Anyway, all right, back to you, Jofwu.
Yeah. So Vin plummets back through the mists, back to the Creakshaw, and absolutely levels the entire structure. The Creakshaw is flattened. She describes it as a crater in the ground. She finds a few of the remaining Inquisitors kind of stumble out of the wreckage, and try to fight back, but she pretty much wrecks each one of them one after another, three at once in one case. So she pushes spikes out of their heads. She kicks the head off of one of them that she finds lying on the ground casually. She picks up a spire the size of a building and uses it as a club to smash three at once. And then the last she finds crushed by a metal slab, which she moves out of the way and then pulls out its eye spikes. And then last moves over to Marsh, just as the mists are kind of just finishing to coalesce, and have completely been kind of sucked towards her like as a tornado. She goes up to Marsh. The last of the mists come into her body, and she pauses for a second. She hesitates to kill Marsh. She kind of realizes that this is not Marsh. This is Ruin. She reaches for it anyways, pulls out one of his spikes out of his eyes, and Marsh, meanwhile, is welcoming death. He's kind of ready for this to be done, and then starts to reach to grab the second spike, but she pauses. She kind of shakes for a second and coughs, grits her teeth, starts to pull out again, and then suddenly disappears into a cloud and is gone.
And that's where these chapter sets end.
Sorry.
Right. What happens to Vin when she vanishes?
Next time.
Like if you happen to be going along with this podcast for some reason and you have to stop and wait like a week, like what?
just
Sorry,
finish
guys.
reading the book and come back to us. Like,
What do you mean?
don't wait on the climax for us.
That takes a level of self-discipline that I do not have.
Right. I'm pretty sure all of us, but I don't know. I know at least like when I got to this point, it was just flip to the next page and just keep going. Like, you got to know what happens next. Readers just cruel to our audience.
Yeah,
Thank
my
you.
first time through, I definitely read the last 30 chapters in one sitting. Like, there was no stopping.
Yeah.
Once this gets rolling, like, there's no way.
Okay, once Vin got captured, I was like, I'm just reading now. Nothing's stopping me.
Yeah.
But how cool is that with Marsh? And, like, I'm kind of glad that she didn't just kill Marsh right there, because she was so close to.
I have a small little question. Why is it removing both eye spikes kills an Inquisitor?
Well, because they're being driven through your brain, I think. Because separating the eye spikes from the rest of the body is what kills an Inquisitor. It's one of the ways to kill an Inquisitor. So therefore, if you take both eye spikes out, you're separating the eye spikes from the rest of the body.
But why is it that, just pulling one out doesn't do that?
Because you're not separating both of them. There's still one there.
You think
Okay.
you'd just be
Well,
blinding them.
There's got to be something to do with some sort of centrality of power through the hemalurgic spikes. That seems to be kind of like the driving, like they themselves take over the brain, right? Because like they go through and it talks about in one of the other epigraphs like how the brain morphs when the spike goes in, like alters the shape of the brain, and so in a sense they're like those spikes seem to be okay. This is theory from Dragon theory, right? Is that it seems to be they in a sense are driving part of that like energy from the brain, and you people have lost like connection or like use of one half of their brain, and so I kind of see it a little bit like that. You're losing like a portion of that power, but you still have, it's not like they suddenly he doesn't like go slack jawed or anything, because it's still this is investiture, it's magic essentially, so he's not losing actually half his brain function, but I kind of imagine it as something similar. You have two hemispheres, you have two spikes, two halves of power. He's going to be less powerful with only one spike, but he's not going to lose that centrality of magic that's keeping his body going. That's just my thought.
And it's also like modifying like their spirits directly, right? So like there's I think the idea is basically like you can pull out one or two spikes somewhere, and it might not do so much damage because you're just pulling out one piece. But there's just a point where you're starting to pull out so much of the spirit that like there's not enough left for it to exist. Like I imagine like there's side spikes. Like maybe you can pull out two of those and they die. Maybe it takes three of the side spikes because they're not as like crucial, right? Thinking like in the Final Empire, right? This is like Marsh's whole thing is like he has like done his research on like trying to figure out how do I kill these things, and he does find out if you pull out the linchpins, there's the one like central spike. If you pull that out, then they're done in one go. So like there's kind of a hierarchy on like some of the spikes matter more than the other ones to your continued existence, and I guess it's just to me it just seems like it happens to be the two eye spikes together is enough. Maybe you could also take out one eye spike and two in the side, and that would do it. I don't know.
So there's like a spiritual bleeding, sort of. Okay,
Well,
that makes sense.
each spike is like a portion of soul, and when it gets hammered into them, it uses the portion of the soul from the other person into their soul. So I don't know if it's like a bleed. Like if you take them out, it's not like they would like bleed themselves dry. You're like removing a chunk of their soul. You remove enough. You remove enough soul,
Yeah.
they die, right? You decapitate the soul is dead, right? Pull out the spine of the soul, soul is dead. So eventually, if you pull out enough ribs, because the other ones are like I think it's 4 inside of the it's like 3 and 3 on the ribs, or 4 and 4 on each side of the ribs. And lose enough ribs and your body dies. So probably similar principle.
Gotcha.
It's anyway, my thoughts on it. Maybe there's like if you have spikes removed for long enough that the Inquisitors would deteriorate. I'd be kind of curious on that.
Do you think the spikes ever rust?
No. I would think magic keeps them pretty well preserved.
I'd like that question though. That would be a fantastic question to ask Brandon. Like maybe the Inquisitors have to like polish their spikes every night before they go to bed.
Do they have to pull them out one at a time and be like,
No,
"Oh,
no,
gotta
vinegar.
polish this one"?
No, the
I'm,
eye ones must
I'm
be
imagining like
nasty.
on the outside. You gotta like
Oh, okay.
polish the.
I'm thinking like oiling them up. I could think, like you oil your sword. You're sitting there like,
Yeah.
He's going to a wedding. He's got to like dress. He's got.
gotta oil.
It's like
my
there are now
spikes,
two
make them
giant
nice and
thumbprints
shiny.
on them.
Oh, Marshy, I can see
Marshy,
myself
you've
in your
gotta-
spikes.
I can see myself reflected in your eyes. Yes, they're like mirrors. So we got a Mistborn Unchained, and she comments how like every push is like Duralumin enhanced, probably even more so.
Yeah.
Would Duralumin even add to this? This is the upper absolute power of Allomancy. This is as powerful as it can get.
I mean, it's kind of like she is Duralumin because she's not using metals right now. She's using
Yes.
the raw investiture right now.
Mm-hmm.
If it did work, though, I just imagine it burning all of the mists at once, and how immensely and unforgivingly powerful that can be.
And they're all gone. And
Just like her blowing up the planet with a single steel push.
oh, jeez.
I mean, it's a little bit like what Ruin did when he shoved the planet.
You mean Rashik?
Rashik.
Sorry.
Vin blows up the planet and Rowan's like, great, thanks. Because, like, she does, when she crumbles Krennic's shot, like, she's seeing metals in the cement and in the earth. Like, there's metals in everything. Their comment was, Breeze's Hamilton.
You know, Mistborn play in the style of Hamilton would be fantastic.
Brandon needs to get on it. This chapter was amazing, though. Like, just as far as what we've seen in these books, this is the most power anyone has had, really, at any given time, and it's just awesome to see. Like, and just know that it only gets better from here. Like,
Yep.
What I think one of my favorite things about this is I love like returning this like fight to Krennic Shaw, and I love like the symbolism of smashing the center of the Lord Ruler's power, leveling that. Like this is truly like the end of an era, which is just kind of a fun callback or evolution in what's happening here.
Yep.
that is fantastic imagery. I like the callback too of like, there's been so many callbacks to the Final Empire in this book, but in like my chapter when it says, the mists hide you, they gave you power. Like that was straight up a line Kelsier had told Vin like back in the day. And calling back to even like, that's the cloak that he gave her. And it's so symbolic and such like the end, the perfect way to cap it off.
Exactly. And then Vin's gone.
Yep.
I do wonder like how terrifying this must be for like everybody else in Scadrial, like with the mists just like zooming away and they're gone, and then like like for many people they're seeing the stars for the first time ever, probably.
Yeah.
For everyone.
I don't know.
Right.
Not just
Well,
stars.
how does that affect like people saying Lord of the Mist, Kelsier's new religion? The mists are there. Kelsier gave us the mist, and then suddenly they're gone. Like what goes religiously? What in the world would go through their heads?
Kelsier gave them the
Kelsier,
mists, but Vin gave
yeah.
them the stars.
I was thinking like the Tensoon part. Like, I'm glad that he like interprets this like in a positive way, because he could have. I feel like he very could easily like interpret this as being not a good thing at all.
Well, so if you remember, so if we think back a while ago in this book, a while ago, when Tins visited Luthadel, the first time he, at the end, he talks to the soldiers, and he tells the priest that when the myths disappear, take everyone underground. So this was part
True.
of
So that means
their
he has some part of his religion has lore around the mists vanishing.
It was all planned out.
It's a good thing that he was paying attention in Sunday school. And
I do think that's cool poetically. Like, Kelsier like gave her the stars in the beginning, and then now she's kind of gifting that to everyone in a weird way.
There's something about that like makes me shiver on a whole nother level, because seeing stars would be amazing, but there's no light pollution. They're seeing the galaxy open up to them in this moment. There's
the
a whole
Cosmere, if you
universe,
will.
the Cosmere, if you will. A whole universe is opening up to them. They have only begun to scratch the surface.
Just like you, if you're reading these books.
Exactly. Are there any other notes for our spoiler-free section? Okay.
Nope. I think we're safe to move on to spoilers.
Okie dokie. Well, next time we're going to be covering the next 5 chapters as well. Let me double check which ones those are. So that's going to be chapters 74 to 78. But it is time to head into the spoiler realm. So if you have not finished this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere, then we recommend that you stop here, because it is likely that we will talk about everything and anything. If you are up to date, feel free to stick around, because it is likely that we will bring up details you may have missed, or plot threads still yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, whatever it is on this podcast. And don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions, possibly to cosmereconnectionspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. But if this is where we must part, then my name is ReaderWarrior, and I have been joined by Swiggity Swoo.
I'm the shattering storm. I'm the bird that poops on your car. I am everything.
Dragon.
It's always a pleasure to join.
Kay.
Have a good one.
And our lovely guest, Jofwu. Is there anything you would like to pimp out or make a tented?
Good question that I didn't think about. Coppermine can always use more editors. Come help us fill it in.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. But I guess that's it. Bye-bye. And we're back. Spoilers.
Woo!
Finally.
So chapter 69, Marsh kills Goradel. Rest in peace.
Okay, so I love this how that was all tied in to like the tie-in from Secret History that Kelsier orchestrated specifically to have Spook send a message, and so that then Marsh would intercept, so that Marsh would know that he needed to pull a spike out of Vin.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happened?
Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Kelsier
Well,
wanted
they had-
Marsh
so-
to know about the.
No, well, they had
Yep.
hoped that Vin would get it, but on the off chance it would be encountered by Ruin, most likely it would be Marsh, in which
well, so
Marsh...
it talks about like how he's like, where Ruin's like, ah ha ha, I ruined your plan, and Kelsier's like literally thinks to himself is like something about basically like a trick from the street of like distracting someone and making them think they won when really your target was something completely different.
Yeah.
So it implies that his whole point was to get Marsh, who he thought was the smarter and better of the two brothers, to be able to have the power to then let Vin go free, because Vin wouldn't. So, because like, yeah, if Vin got it and pulled a spike out, great, but like, he didn't ever expect it to get to Vin.
I thought it was a rig the game quote and how either option would have been good. I don't remember. It's been a while since I read Secret History.
I guess like there's always the possibility that it got through, but the way it reads is like that Kelsier specifically planned. This message is not going to get through. Ruin's going to stop it, but he orchestrated it such that it would happen that way. It was Kelsier did it with the idea that Marsh would get this message. Like that was not just a happy accident. It was something that he planned for and tricked Ruin on.
I think he planned for it. It was just, hopefully it just gets to Vin, but most likely this is going to happen.
Gorodel is disposable. Actual
Kelsier,
Kelsier.
like I love Kelsier is like I love Kelsier. He's a fantastic character, and like that's totally like, and like I think he feels bad. I don't think he like just like doesn't care about people at all, you know. But like Gorodel is a means to an end, to a greater end to him, right?
Yeah. I mean, he pats him on the shoulder. He's like, good job delivering that message. Bye.
I mean, that's kind of how Kelsier is
Yeah.
a lot of the time. Like, a lot of the people that he interacts with ends up being like a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Kelsier,
Like all the way back to like in the cavern when they're training the soldiers, and he uses oh goodness,
Demu.
thank you, yeah, Demu, and he sets up the other guy to pick this fight so that he can make Demu like beat this guy.
Bilge.
Yeah, but he'll totally use that guy to make this thing work, because it's more important to him than one guy's life.
but Kelsier definitely would not have stopped and spoken to Gorodel during like the revolt in the Final Empire that got him to change
Correct.
sides in the first place.
Correct.
That's for sure.
I believe Dragon has found the quote.
Yeah, so I found where it talks about it. I'm still kind of scanning. Like I found the section, but I haven't found where Kelsey actually says like his little like his piece. So I'm on the right page though.
Okay.
Just trying to find it. Sorry, not quite there yet.
You're good.
Okay.
Whenever you do find it, you can pop in and let us know. But we'll move on to
Chapter 70.
chapter 70.
Which...
So, Jofwu, you had written something down that you wanted to mention in this chapter, correct? I think.
Yeah, oh no, it's 71.
Oh, it's 71. Dang it! I keep
We'll get there.
getting
We'll get there. It's not this exciting, but we'll get there.
He's very excited for whatever
I just want to make
tidbit that you
sure.
have.
I want to
We
make
don't
sure that we
forget it.
don't forget it. Yeah.
Let's see. The epigraph talks about insanity. Wasn't it on insanity?
Mm.
I don't remember. I really don't. Okay. You have Elend and Yeoman talking to each other, confronting each other's beliefs. You got the hospital, the realization of the snap, the medals. Wait, wasn't it about the medals? No, it was about snapping people.
The medals,
Wasn't it?
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Miss
We were
Snappy
talking about.
Ball.
Yeah, you were saying that they had to have.
The latent allomantic gene. Yes.
Yes, and I was saying no. I didn't think that they did have to have that.
Because Brandon said in one of the epigraphs that like Alendi is like one of the very first Allomancers to ever exist, and that every other Allomancer after that directly can be traced back to the original 10, 16, however many people he made with the Lerasium.
I thought
Okay.
there was allomancy before Rashik.
There was.
There
There is.
was, but to the
Not
only one
common.
we know of is Alendi.
Well, only one we have confirmed, but it talks about that it was there. It just wasn't as common.
I thought I was reading the annotations, and there was something about Alendi was like the very first Allomancer.
Alendi, I don't. There's no confirmation about that, I don't think.
Can somebody
Alendi-
check? I don't want
Jofwu,
to risk opening
have
up
a-
and
Yeah,
It's
so
under
Alendi-
Swiggity
you have
or
that in
Hey.
Coppermind.
Yeah.
If you go under, it's not on Coppermine. It's on the WOBs. So if you go under the
Oh.
annotation, so if you go under the links tab, click the annotation. I don't want to click it because my internet is on its last legs apparently, and then just I don't know, Control F Alendi maybe.
I'm getting there.
I knew I would get back to it. Thank you, Kay. We got there eventually.
What chapter is this? Chapter 70?
Yeah, but the Alendi thing was a while ago. Like, do Control F Alendi. I don't remember when. It was a while ago. I did. My brain is like.
Need a copper mind, mate.
I do. It needs to be perfectly organized.
So, Alendi was one of the very first Allomancers. But he gained his powers as the mists began to cover the world because, of course, he was snapped by the mists.
The deepness.
Dang it! I gave Kay the means to destroy my argument. Okay.
No, but I think you're right though, because I think like going into Era 2, the only reason is explicitly because the like noble blood has spread. So like
Yeah.
I think Rashik like specifically made the Ska either unable to not have that gene, or made the Ska only out of people who didn't have that gene in the first place.
Okay.
The
Literally,
question is then, Jofwu, do you have to have the gene in order to be snapped by the mists, or can the mists give you power even if you don't have that gene?
And so I think you have to have the gene to be snapped by the mists.
yeah.
So the gene existed then pre Alendi, right? Because when the mist first came, and he's like one of the first, but it still would have gone. It still would have had to have been snapping people in by the percentage of 16%, right? Because to keep with that,
I don't.
why would the number change? Is the question.
Because
wouldn't.
Preservation's plan was to this part. It wasn't that time. It was this time.
But it still would have been the same.
The point is that he built it into the myth to have the number 16 through everything.
But I don't know.
There is. Brandon did say that like it was specifically set for the mist to do what it did after the well was like returned. So like, that's why the mist doesn't. That's why the mist changes how it behaves. So like after Vin takes up the power and puts it back at the end of Well of Ascension, and then at Hero of Ages, now the mist is like acting different than it used to.
But even before she took up the power at the well, the mists had started snapping people.
Right.
I think that Preservation could have made it that this only happens after Rashik ascends.
But it's when the well is full is what triggers. It's not after she puts it back. It's when the well is full is when it starts doing what it does.
So it would have been doing that when
Alendi. I see what you're saying.
When Alendi, that's how Alendi became, right? If he's one of the first ones that was snapped by the mist, therefore the mist were snapping people at Alendi's time, and therefore it's going to follow the pattern of 16 because that pattern was set up by inside of nature by preservation before he lost his mind.
But he could have set it on like a timer or something, couldn't he?
Why would the number change? The point is, it's snapping people. That is on a timer, right?
Because there was no reason for them to be looking for. There was no reason to even worry about because preservation
How would
knew
he changed it though?
Rashek would take it.
His mind is gone.
He put it on a timer. He's God. He can. This is my magic power. I'm going to say, hey, wait 1,000 years, then you're going to do the 16 thing. It's going to be really great.
But why should that matter?
Because
why does it matter?
What if Alendi happened to do it too? The point is
because nothing matters
someone doing it.
in Alendi's time. Nothing matters in Alendi's time. All of it was for
Elend
Vin.
and Vin that he's trying to help out with that. It's not for Alendi.
But here's the thing with predicting the future: is since it's so vague, you could technically have someone else do the same thing.
Okay, but that's still another 1,000 years. He knows that group is not going to succeed. He knows it's going to be likely. At that point.
He knows it's not likely. You can't ever guarantee the future. That's the thing. When he did it, he can't guarantee the future. He took a long time, and it worked.
Preservation makes the law. Point 1, Alendi and Rashek. Point 2, Vin and Elend. He knows everything is at point 2. He knows nothing really is mattering at point 1.
But the point is that the myths are a factor of nature. He built the 16 number to be in nature, to show up in nature.
But
he built it from the beginning of the world that he built.
From the very beginning of the world.
So when they created Schedule, he was already planning to backstab Ruin.
Oh, 100%.
No, yeah.
That's not at all.
Because he knew that.
That if
Ruin
you disagree, cite
power.
something that shows that it's wrong.
But cite something that proves specifically that says that. Okay.
It's from the moment that he gave he gave some of extra of himself into the people so that they would have to create life, right? Mm-hmm. Or to create sapient life, at least to create the humans. And so from that point on, preservation had to have that plan in mind.
Yeah.
Or maybe
if you want, I can find where it says inside of Secret History, the number that I built into nature. He talks about the number that he built into everything.
Yeah, but we're talking about that from time 2 standpoint. We have no idea if time 1 even same laws, basically.
Yes,
Rashek
it would
changed
have the
everything.
same, but it would have the same. The laws of nature would still be the same, reader. He didn't change
unless
the laws
if
of
he
nature.
is capable of creating these laws of nature, they could easily have changed.
Unless Rashek purposefully changed those laws of nature, which why would he have any knowledge of those to even consider changing them? He wouldn't have even changed them. So they would.
But preservation could set it on a timer. Preservation could say to.
He did set it on a timer, but the timer was the well.
But the timer could also be all of his power. After the 1,000 years.
All of his power was in the well when Alendi went there. That's the point, reader.
Not all of his power, because there was still the mists out there. Okay, can we move on? This is an argument that nobody is going to win.
I think that he could. I think that preservation could do it either way. But I do think that Ska cannot be snapped. I think that it's only through nobles. I don't think there's any proof of Ska that snapped. I don't think we have any evidence of that. So it's possible, but I don't think that the books ever show that it can happen.
I think that'd be something that I'd like to follow up with Brandon about, is just finding out because we do know that he alters, it mentions specifically, he alters the physiology of Ska. He literally alters the physiology of Ska, saying, hey, the people that I don't like, they're going to be hardier, they're going to be stouter, they're going to have more kids, and these people that I'm choosing to kind of follow me, I'm kind of altering these people, which again I think timeline wise seems a little shaky, because he uses the beads of Atium or the beads of Atium to persuade kings to join his side. So, I mean, did he like pre-pick the kings he was going to go bribe when he had the power, and then after he has the power, he then goes and after he like finishes the Well of Ascension, then he goes and uses those beads because he made the changes when he had the power, and then he goes and gives them beads, and it's the people that he gives beads to also has a physiological change to have less children. Like because it talks about that, I believe, in Well of Ascension or in the beginning of Hero of Ages. So I think that's an interesting point. But B, I would be interested in learning from Brandon is, did that change stop them 100%? How, like, was there a gene that had to be present before inside of like a Alendi? Was there a gene that Alendi had to have to be snapped? And how did that work during Alendi's time? I don't know. I think all these questions that we are arguing over and we don't have answers, I would be very interested in hearing Brandon's side of things.
Same, especially the Alendi one, because we know Allomancy existed at the time. And it's hard, well, I guess for me, it's hard to think that if it existed, when he took the power, he would go back and he would maybe kill off anyone that had it before. Like, do you really think he would change that? Because if not,
Yes.
then there could be strains of Allomancy outside of just the nobles that he gave Lerasium to. I could believe that.
So there are 16 metals. I'm gonna move us past the elementic gene. Goodness knows that could be a whole hour. So there are 16
Yeah,
main
there
metals,
are 16 metals.
2 of which we're counting in this, so there's actually 4 missing metals, not 2 missing metals.
Right. Jofwu, can you maybe illuminate on this? Isn't there something, I heard something about, talking about referencing Era 2 that Sazed, when he ascends, he changes some of the metals that are part of the table?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which ones were part of the table and which ones were removed and added?
It's an epigraph, and I think it's a subsequent epigraph somewhere later in the book. Atium and Malatium are not part of the 16.
Right, because they're god metals. So he's not really changing the 16. It's just changing their understanding of the 16 because Atium is god metal.
No, because the weird thing is the mists are snapping people that can do Atium. So like of the 16, right? It's snapping.
Wasn't that
people.
retroed into Electrum Atium? So they're technically Electrum mistings.
That aside,
We're not
okay.
Not talking about the retcon.
Point is, like, of the 16, the idea would be that like one of every 16 is an Atium, and one of every 16 is a Malatium misting.
Oh, interesting.
But then you find out that it's not actually, like, those are not 2 of the 16. So like 2 of the metals, 2 of the actual base 16 metals were not, the mists were not creating mistings of that type. That's like the really weird, trippy thing that that gets
Preservation realized
changed.
they were not.
Right.
Preservation realized they were never going to have.
Sorry, go ahead.
Preservation changed the chart to include Atium and Malatium and got rid of Nigrosil and I forget the other one.
Chromium, I think. Brandon has. Okay. I think Brandon has said conflicting things about which 2 metals were replaced. So, like, if you try to like do the research for it, you like find conflicting answers, and it's not 100% clear. He says one thing, and I think he changed it.
Yeah, he got rid of Bendalloy and Chromium, not the enhancement one. He got rid of those 2 and basically put Malatium and Atium on the chart. When Harmony ascended, he basically fixed the chart and restored it to what it actually is supposed to be.
Something like that.
Anything else for chapter 70?
So anyways, the Allomancy gene.
I will kill you. I will
I
ram a
did find
spike
the
through
piece
your
about
eyeball.
Kelsier, kind of his little potential, like his reference to his trick. It's not as clear as I thought it was. I thought it was pretty clear cut, like his references, but it does leave it very vague. So, Kelsier could be playing kind of like a double game. But one thing that I noticed, so at the beginning is Kelsier holding preservation's power. He says here, says talking about a man left Orto. Kelsier didn't know this man, Goradel, personally. However, the power knew him. And so he's like, oh yeah, Kelsier might have killed him, but now Goradel might just save the world. Kelsier soared behind him, feeling the anticipation of the myth's build. So Kelsier is like literally moving his nexus, which Ruin can see. So he's like very specifically like drawing his attention and Ruin's attention to Goradel, because he's like, oh yes, Goradel's like my piece. So he's like very, very like obviously like kind of sitting there. And then later then on the next page, later on that page he says, did you ever play card tricks, Ruin? Kelsier asked, back when you were a common man. And Ruin's like, I've never common man, blah, blah, blah. It's like, so what did that vessel do with its time? Play card tricks? Kelsier asked. Hardly, Ruin said. I was a far better man than that. And then Kelsier goes on to say, I was pretty good at card tricks when I was a child. My first cons were with cards. Not 3-card spin. That was too simple. I preferred the tricks where it was you, a deck of cards, and a mark who is watching your every move. And that's the only real reference he makes to that. And afterwards, he kind of like, he watches Marsh struggle. He's like, Ruin seems very like making comments about like Ruin's extra interested in making sure Kelsier can't get close to talk to read Marsh's thoughts. But it never really makes like much of a reference beyond that. But it does make me interested that it's like it's you and someone who's watching you. So I know Ruin was watching me, and I very specifically drew my nexus and my point of view directly to Goradel, which would draw Ruin's attention to it. So he very much like drew his attention to Goradel. Whether Goradel could have made it would have been a win, right? Getting that message to Vin. But he also knew like kind of like the odds were 99% chance I'm drawing Ruin's attention to this, so therefore Ruin will send hopefully Marsh, who he probably also saw was the closest hands nearby that would come and then read the message out loud to him.
I mean, that's really cool that he had faith in his brother at the end to use that information. And he probably did know that all those Inquisitors would never let Goradel pass. So I think he made the right call. Like, that's really cool that he had faith in Marsh.
I think there's a quote in Secret History. You have it open maybe still, but he says it's later after the scene where he pulls the earring out. He says something about how he's like he always was the better brother. Something very, very sweet about his brother.
Chapter 71. So this was the Sazed chapter. He's with the first, and we have nothing to talk about here. 72.
Nothing that's that exciting. Oh,
Religion is super exciting. At least that says it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, this is the very small part at the very end of the chapter that's not super exciting. It was about Tinsun. Like, what if like Ruin had like turned his attention to Tinsun? I think.
Yeah.
If he wanted to, and I guess my only thought was that like, so the Kandra are like a little bit less susceptible to Ruin, right? And then like their whole thing is like they have the what is it, the resolution, right? So like I wonder like if he had like tried to like manipulate Tinsun, you kind of have to wonder if like Tinsun would have just like pulled his spikes out, because it would be like, oh, this is the time has come, right?
He would have been able to take control of Tinsun, because later on in the book, in the next in the next 5 chapters, I think, one of the Kandra, one of the second generation, has Yeah, he has one of the 5th generation, I think. He gives them some of the Atium to go sell for supplies. And Ruin is able to, once they take it out of the homeland, Ruin spots the Atium and immediately takes control of Kanpar and the other Kandra as well, and uses them and makes them walk in and lead him to the Atium.
But I do not think that Tensoon would resolve himself, because that seemed to be something that the First needed to order.
That's true. Okay.
Well, I thought Kay brought this up last time. Isn't there an era 2? He talks Tensoon says something about not remembering everything about Vin to
Yes.
But that means he doesn't remember everything because he did pull out his spike.
Well, he
That's
did
the only reason why
later
he would.
on.
Right, so he does later. Like, he pulls out his own spike, so that means he. When did he do that? Wasn't it part of the resolution?
Yes, but that's later on in the book. It's not at this point in time.
Right, it's not at this point, but the point is it happens in this book where Tensoon does end up pulling out his spikes, and he does follow through.
But
So-
the first generation are the ones who ordered the resolution.
Yeah.
Correct.
As long as the solution has to be ordered by the First. It can't be, I feel ruined, so I will remove my spike. Okay. Sure.
Right, because then also there's Kandra that are outside of the earshot that don't remove their spikes.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We get our first word of God metal in this chapter. And
Right.
that's about it.
Atium is the body.
And then, oh no, it's not this chapter. It's the next one. It's the next one where we.
So
get
on this chapter,
other God metal.
I have one last thing on this chapter before we move on, Kay, if that's okay.
No, you're good. I was just saying that the next chapter has second mention of a God metal. That's all I was gonna say.
Nice.
I'm saying specifically the words God metal.
I gotcha.
The term.
So one of my things for this chapter, and I brought it up back in the spoilers, back in book 1 of Mistborn Final Empire, when they talk about, and I talked about in the spoiler section of this. Did anyone bring up in the summary of like the whole like where they hid the Atium inside of the gold? I don't want to rehash this. Someone already brought it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys already talked about that. How if they had have raided their own, if they had raided their own gold, they would have also found all the Atium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I just love that tie back. It's just so beautiful. That if Cayman hadn't screwed up the whole plan, he would have had not just gold, but he would have had the entire like shipment of Atium as well.
Yep.
Stupid Cayman.
72. Yes, 72. So this is the beginning of Vin's fight. It really sucks to be a Duralum and aluminum misting.
Yeah.
I thought I remember there being a wob about preservation making Vin his champion. Or
yes. That's why she's able to pull in the mists.
Does that make Marsh Ruin's champion?
I don't know who else would be, besides maybe all of them.
Like,
yeah, I would
champion is a. Sorry.
I would say that Marsh is probably Ruin's champion at this point. Because Ruin is using Marsh for all of the like input.
Are you tying this to the 10 days challenge of like Dalinar and Odium? Like
I was, and how champion seems to have some level of magic to it. So granted, we don't really know because Stormlight 5 isn't out yet, and haven't. But the term champion seems to imply there's some connection between a shard and their champion.
Oh.
I'm trying to understand that connection more. Because preservation situation with Vin is you become the new preservation. Ruin situation with Marsh is I've given you power and I've pushed your spirit web to the maximum.
I don't think Marsh would be, because I guess it just kind of goes back to whether or not, like, is he using the term in like some sort of mechanical, meaningful Cosmere sense, or is it just sort of a mundane sense of the word, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there has to be some kind of like, to me, there's not a relationship there between Marsh and Ruin that, I don't know, he's just sort of controlling him.
Yeah.
Which doesn't, to me, is a different thing than some sort of like bestow of power.
I see
It's
what
like
you're saying.
diffused.
So it's kind of like when somebody ascends, they're reaching champion status.
Like Dalinar goes into the thing with Honor's power and Honor's authority, and he
And he's
can
able
sort
to
of
make. Sorry.
he can choose someone to like be his champion, or he can be the champion. But like that's up to him and like the contract he made.
So it's like he's acting under the authority of. Vin is acting under the authority of preservation, but Ruin is just controlling Marsh. Marsh is not acting under the authority of Ruin.
Something else that
Marsh
comes to
is
mind.
not. I would say Marsh is not acting independently.
Exactly.
Well, like something else that comes to my mind about this is another term we see repeated in this chapter that we don't see for a long time is unchained. She's a Mistborn unchained.
I think it's the next chapter.
Okay,
She
it's not
does.
bad.
But yeah, no, you're.
Yeah.
But like we see that only one other time, and that's with Ishar being unchained, right?
Uh-huh. Apparently Brandon just means unchained as in super powerful.
Well, and Dalinar's called Unchained too. But yeah, I did think like that is an interesting like use of the same, meaning a very similar thing there, right? Like a magic user who has sort of like well and fully beyond like the normal constraints of the magic system. Like this is the magic system. This is what you can do with that magic system. Here's a person who's like breaking all the rules.
And is at the upper total, this is all you could do. I've reached this level that has never been touched before. Yeah. We're just going to roll straight into 73 as well, because it's just the ending of the fight.
Sure.
I love how Ruin is sort of like, shoot, she's becoming preservation, and tries to bring all of his try. Like, what is he hoping? Vin, like, stops, beats the Inquisitors, and suddenly gets beaten by all the Koloss. Like, what's his...
Honestly, Ruin should have just killed her when he had the chance. Instead of choosing to torture her. If he really wanted to kill her, he should have just killed her then. But he decided to be dramatic. Yeah, he decided to be dramatic instead. And
I think she knows where the Atium is, though, right?
He wants to make sure that she doesn't know, and also she doesn't know about the spike. And if Marsh didn't know about the spike, that scene would have gone on way longer and been way darker.
He also thought that he had Marsh completely under his control.
Right. I also I have the quote piece where like he finishes his card trick, and also he kind of makes this mention, Kelsier makes this mention about choosing the better brother, which kind of completes all of this. Is basically Kelsier waits until Marsh is... So a note before is he saw that Marsh, when he was in his like bloodlust frenzy, he was out of the grips of Ruin, and Ruin couldn't fully hold him. He waits until Marsh starts kind of getting into that. He starts breaking Vin's bones, and then it says, Marsh snapped Vin's arm now, and then Kelsier hits him with his strength. Kind of creates this friction, and Ruin's like laughing at him, and then Kelsier says, "Do you know why I always won at cards? It's because I could always force people to choose the card that I wanted them to." Ruin paused and then looked down. The letter delivered by Gordel, not to Vin, but to Marsh, did its trick. Then Marsh ripped Vin's earring. And then he says, "You made the wrong one of us into your Inquisitor, Ruin. You should have picked the good. You shouldn't have picked the good brother. He always did have a nasty habit of doing what was right instead of doing what was smart." So this is kind of the completion of like he sent it. He got Marsh to set it up, and then which I always found interesting. I was like, oh, maybe he's just like Marsh suddenly has this time, but Marsh is able to also be free because Kelsier is throwing the full power, well, as much of his full power of preservation, not all of preservation, against Ruin, which was enough to like distract him so he couldn't stop Marsh from grabbing the earring. So
that is really cool.
My only other comments were just the amazement that Vin is so powerful she can literally like push spikes out of bodies now.
That's wonder, like, I don't know. I wonder, like, if like what happened to all these spikes, all these. I think like going into Era 2, like I don't know. I wonder if someone like dug all these spikes up and has like since used them or done something with them, or whether maybe they're still buried somewhere.
Well, aren't some of them used for earrings?
Yeah, don't they use them to make the Pathian earrings?
Yeah, Pathian earrings that where Zazid can talk to him because he's like, I don't want an earring made from a leftover Inquisitor spike.
I think Harmony, when he reshaped the world, like took all, maybe like put them in a chamber somewhere.
Of secrets.
Yeah, chamber of secrets. And then when Spook started messing around with human letters, he's like, "Fine, I'll give you the box of leftovers, but stop making new ones."
Why do we think the blood frenzy kind of dampens Ruin's hold over Marsh?
Brandon actually said that emotions blur the lines between the realms.
Emotions blur the lines between the realms.
Yeah. It's in the thing that was in the link. That's the word. Thank you.
Yeah.
Annotations. It was talked about in there, but basically crazy emotions blur it, and that's why snapping, it happens at strong emotions. And he actually says that you can snap to happy emotions too, but that rarely ever happens.
I was about to ask that. Can you just be like so happy that you snap? You're just like,
yes,
oh, this is the best day of my life.
Yes. No one ever has the best day of their life in the Final Empire. So
yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It's only theoretically possible. So do we see people like dipping into Shadesmar when they're under a lot of stress?
If they have the capability to travel, like a Elsecaller could possibly.
Well, and like Shallan, we see that with her in Way of Kings when she starts like freaking out about the shadows, about the symbols following, the cryptics following her. Like she unknowingly dips into Shadesmar.
I had a question. Doesn't she only look into it because she doesn't have transportation? She only looks into it.
Correct, but she doesn't do it like
on purpose.
She does it because her emotions are high.
Mm-hmm. So emotions do activate investiture, or more so allow a connection to the spiritual realm, and the spiritual realm funnels investiture into you, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Also, quick note is that she can't fully go into Shadesmar, but she can still get hurt or injured in Shadesmar when she's looking into it.
Yes. Which still bothers me, but that's a argument for Way of Kings.
I mean, it's like if you're sticking your head through a window, like your body's not through the window, but like someone could still come up and slap you when your head's through the window.
But I
Like-
can see it as like you're pulling the blinds away and you're looking into it, not necessarily, or you're putting on glasses that give you different night vision goggles or X-ray glasses.
But
Yeah,
that's
see,
not-
that would be seeing but not interacting.
Yeah,
But
Which
she
I
can see
think
and
is-
interact, which means
I
she's
don't-
sticking like equivalently an arm through to like touch things and mess with them. So therefore, she
Yeah.
can be messed with in return.
Okay.
I'm also bothered by that, but I like
Thank you.
Kay's explanation of like the whole window thing. So
Yeah, that is a good explanation. I just disagree on the fact that she should be able to go into the cognitive realm.
stick your head out the window and have a train hit it. You know.
Yeah, like
Okay. Anything else for these chapters of Mistborn?
I got a couple things.
Sure.
One quick one I think is fun. I like when Vin goes up above the mists and talks about all the stars. She's a million stars, and she describes them as eyes of those long dead, which is I don't think this is like I don't know if this is intentional, but I just like think it's like a fun foreshadowing of Trell, who's like the whole like idea is this god who's like has 1,000 eyes or like the stars.
Mhm.
and Seiza did tell her about Trell.
Mhm.
That was one of the
About
really
Trellism. Yeah.
So I don't think it's like intentional.
Trelligism.
I don't think
Trelligism.
it's Trelligism. It changes. Trelligism and then it's Trellism later.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's just like I don't think it's intentional foreshadowing, but it's just kind of fun, like knowing that like Trell is like coming. Like this is what's next.
It could be viewed as Vin opening Scadrial up to the Cosmere, and now people can now look at them. Like they've had this mist protecting around their planet for 2,000 years,
In
and
the
now
same
Vin has wiped it
breath
away.
as the destroying of Critic Shah.
Yes.
It is like the end of the era
Yeah.
symbology for sure.
She destroys the past and opens up a new future.
Okay. So, question about thinking about the mists gathering, Jofwu, that you made me think of. Are the mists across the whole world, or just the final Empire area?
Just the final empire.
Yeah, I think just the Pile Empire. I don't know if like a quote off the top of my head, but
Empire wide that we thought was cool from earlier.
like the whole point is that they're like protecting like the final Empire from the sun.
The mist?
Well,
The
the
mist
ashes.
are?
Well, they are
The ashes.
they are focused around
But
the
it's-
well, which is where
Yeah.
a concentrated
Okay.
part of preservation's power is. So I'm guessing they stay relative to that area.
Like I don't think like the Southerners ever describe like mists, like being aware of mists.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Is like seeing like commenting on everyone being like, "Oh look, the mists are running away." We're like the Southerners sitting there, like, "Huh."
All of the
The
shots
mist,
of
they're
people
running
looking
away.
up.
Like, did they have mist? Was it too hot where they were? Because like they were like, so it was like so much hotter where they live. Anyway, I was just curious. I never see any reference. So I wondered if you knew of anything, if it talked about if the mists were localized or truly worldwide.
All of the
think
shots
so.
of people looking up and seeing the mist, and then it just cuts to some random people with tiki masks looking up and like, who the fudge are these people?
What are those lights?
I also liked Vin using her steel and iron like on the stones and like the things that have like just the traces of metals. And just like I think it's really cool. You get all the way to Lost Metal and you have Kelsier talking about how like there's ways to do like allomancy on things that have no metal in them at all even.
The axis of shoot. If John was here, he would know the exact quote. He loves that quote. Like the axis of something.
So I think it's kind of like, I guess, just fun, like setup of like what the powers can do that hasn't been explored yet. And last thing was there's like some really fun descriptions of the mists entering Vin and like leaking out of her, and it's very Stormlight vibes with like the way Stormlight leaks out of people, which I thought was kind of fun.
For sure.
You I liked how like it would leave her body, go back to the storm, just to come back into her body.
Also,
Into
heals
the
her
storm.
just like Stormlight,
Mm-hmm.
which is like that's a specific power just to this. We see her using like Metalborn powers mostly, just really enhanced versions. I guess, is that like an enhanced version of Pewter, or is that a whole new power for her to just get healed?
That's just a typical thing with investiture. That's why nobody ever gets sick if they're invested.
So would that happen
It's
if you
the
have like
same
a lot of
thing.
breaths for sex?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. If you have a certain amount of breaths, like you don't get sick, and you heal quicker, you heal faster.
Okay.
Oh shoot, what was it in Sunlit Land?
Right?
The BDPs?
BEUs.
BEUs, yeah.
Yeah, if you've got a million
You have a
BEs.
minimum threshold of
Is that what she
Exactly.
did? You
10%
just
skip
skipped to the end
capacity.
of this chapter?
One other thing, actually. I'm trying to remember. Is there ever like an explanation for why Vin struggles to kill Marsh at the end, or does not
I
kill
mean,
him?
well, it happened to be that was the moment when she ascended.
She
was
did.
in
but
the
there's like
process. She was in the process of killing him. She was reaching to grab.
She hesitated
Yeah.
for a moment, probably because that's Kelsier's brother. It's still partly Kelsier's face.
Okay.
And he did kind of just save me. But then
I
she
felt like-
realizes that he's completely controlled by Ruin.
Yeah.
I don't know why she doesn't use emotional allomancy in this against all of them.
That would have been smart. I do like that.
Could she?
A piece of me was wondering if like part of it was like because to me it was like she wanted to do it and like something was like stopping her because she like coughs and she kind of like shakes for a second, and I wondered if like preservation's power was like, oh, we can't like, I don't like hurting things, but then she goes and like fights Ruin, so I don't know, it just made me wonder.
I think that's more so just her physical body being burned away.
Being
But there is I mean, I think Jofwu, like, there is a thought around like the more preservation she becomes, the harder it is for her to damage and hurt. So it could be like a mix of like her body isn't functioning like she thinks it should because it's becoming preservation, and preservation doesn't want to end. And so there it could be a potential moment of conflict. I always personally took it as like, oh, her body is just like stopping to function like she thinks it should function. But I mean, we see preservation, stop and hesitate and not be able to kill and attack Ellen, and have to have his arm swung by Kelsier.
It could be a conflict with the intent, but we do see Vin later like still do a whole bunch of things that are to change the opposite of preserving.
Yeah.
And
we know that shards are usually like vessels can push against the intent of their shard easier when they're just ascended.
Yeah.
But it just made me wonder, like if it was like if that was adding to like, oh, it's Kelsier's brother.
I think it was more of a mental thing, not necessarily a magical.
Who knows?
It could be a combination of both.
True.
I did think it was
mental,
cool
physical,
that
spiritual.
we get, like Kelsier dialogue in this chapter, right?
Yeah, I just don't know how I feel about Kelsier helping Vin. Like, I like him helping Marsh.
Why don't you like him helping Vin?
Because I like Vin doing this on, like, the Hoid scene. I love that scene where Vin is the only person we have ever seen in Cosmere to look at Hoid, realize he's dangerous, and turn away. And I feel that having, in the cognitive realm, Kelsier yell at, or like, no, he's dangerous, takes away from that. Because Vin's always been a creature of instinct. And so, do I like Kelsier having preservation? I can't say if I like or dislike it. It's just a matter of is. But him giving up the power shouldn't be him funneling power to her, but just so releasing it from his hold.
You
Like-
want her to have more agency over it, kind of like you. I think in a long time ago you mentioned it would have been nice if she was the one to figure out that her earring was a hemalurgic spike as well.
Possibly, but I really like I like him helping his brother. I don't necessarily like him helping Ben.
For what it's worth, my read of Secret History, for what it's worth, is that it's more like when Kelsier. I don't think he like pushes the power to her. Like when he goes up to her, my read of it is the power pretty much wants Vin, and he just lets it go.
It's been a bit, so I'll need to reread it at some point. Dragon, you don't need to pull it out. Okay,
I know we're wrapping up. I wasn't going to open it up. But...
Okay. But that could vary. I could just need to reread. But I like Vin being a character. Okay, I like her having help because I like Ellen helping her, I like Kelsier helping her, and I like Sazed helping her when they're alive. I don't necessarily like it being that is intruding upon her instincts and her.
I think you just don't like the fact that Kelsier came back from the dead.
Oh no, I love that Kelsier came back from the dead.
So do I.
I am so excited to see what our favorite sociopath do in Era 3.
Yeah.
I think there's a precedent, though, that her instincts and everyone's instincts are constantly being influenced. You kind of have to take into perspective, like, you see these moments of conversations where, like, preservation speaks to someone and kind of, like, gives them a hint, or Ruin is speaking. Ellen, like, Vin speaks to Ellen. It's like, there's this aspect that what you see and what happens in the physical realm, there's so much more going on in the cognitive and the spiritual, because like Vin then speaks to Ellen in the next set of chapters, like, so Kelsier, like, and these words that when I first read these like, you don't know, like when you read the book, you don't have like this is Kelsier's voice, like saying these words to Spook, saying these words to, but you're like, what are these words? There's like, they're different, they're separate, they're marked as italics. They're like not their internal monologue, but you're just like, okay, there's these words, but there's no indicator. But it's actually peppered throughout books 1, 2, and 3 that there are forces, cognitive and spiritual, affecting and talking and influencing people's instincts. But like Ruin, in fact, affecting her instincts through every single book.
Yes, but that's about it for the cognitive realm, because only Ruin can affect it. Preservation can't. He literally wave them off. Like, that's all. Her instincts have to react to that. This is like some backstage pass into her mind and affecting it that way. I don't like that. I don't like them.
Well, he has a strong connection to her, and he no longer has. And he was able to speak to people that were mad without using Preservation's power. He used his own cognitive power. He spoke to people.
I'm not concerned about them. I'm concerned about Vin.
Yeah, I know. You don't like it that it's Vin, but the point is there's a precedent that's been set for 3 books.
Yes. Well, there's a precedent that was set
for 3 books.
3 books.
Because we're at the end of the
retconning.
3rd book.
Yeah.
It's from the very beginning. Technically even before the book, where you have Kelsier's master being influenced by Ruin. So like this is a thing that I didn't like it at first when I first found out. It's like, oh, Kelsier's alive, and I have to go read Secret History. But once I read it, it's like it made these pieces kind of fall into place.
But it was always
but
Ruin.
You're welcome
for
to not like
Kelsier to be doing it is kind of like, okay, that's kind of doing some Ruin.
Yeah.
Anything else?
But
Kelsier has always been an agent of Ruin.
True. Okay. Anything else for this chapter set?
If they can talk to you by being pierced with metal, she's basically pierced by the mists at this point. That's my rationale of it.
I'm too tired to even compute that. I'm sorry.
Well, so it makes sense that Kelsier would be able to see at this point in time, because she is being imbued with Preservation's power right now, and Kelsier is Preservation.
Mm-hmm.
So
But it's like other situations before. Right now, they have that direct investiture line connecting them. It's other situations that I don't necessarily like before that, when they're
But
her
the
in
only
the
other...
cognitive realm.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All of us just
Okay.
wanted to go to bed.
Okay. Jofwu, thank you so much for joining us in this.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a lot of fun.
It was an absolute pleasure to have you. Tell Chaos thank you as well for getting you guys to come on. I know that he relayed to you guys, so thank him as well from me, because it was having you and Rosemary. I knew it was Rose something. Having you and Rosemary was really a lot of fun these past 2 episodes.
Yeah, it was really
good.
cool.
So, thanks.
Thanks for being on.
And that's just about going to cover it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us in our ramblings and predictions, and we cannot wait to cover what is next. Have a nice night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
We usually take like a minute break and then we'll jump into the spoiler section. So, yeah, water and stuff.
Fair enough.
Jofwu, I'm told I'm supposed to bond with you over small children's. According to Rosemary.
Yes. Yeah, I've got 3 of those. You can see their art.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately on the East Coast, so bedtime's a little earlier here.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well, being in Utah, that I don't get that. So they start the podcast at 7, and I'm like just barely trying to put them down. So I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So
we don't mind when Dragon
always...
pops in and out of existence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just unfortunately had to become the standard. It's rare that I ever can get on and not have to at least go do something. So
yeah, I've got a 7, a 5, and a 1, and so they were finally like past the baby phase where they all stay in bed once they're in bed and sleep mostly, usually.
How do you get your 5-year-old to stay in bed? She's half the trouble.
That's accurate.
For me.
How do you know?
I'm like, okay, now you go to this, like last night. My 2-year-old was passed out by like, I don't know, 8:15, 8:20. And then 9:15, 9:20, my 5-year-old's coming out. But I can't sleep. Then lay down. Like, you're not going to be sleeping, walking, talking to me.
Accurate.
I don't know how you think that's going to help.
Listen to an audiobook.
Or a podcast.
And
It's not
water.
our podcast. I mean, it needs the views.
I don't know. We've had pretty good views this month.
Well, Jofwu will get us more views. Won't you, Jofwu?
Absolutely.
At least one.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
My mom will watch, and no.
I was just thinking that Joffu's mom. Even my mom doesn't watch this podcast.
My dad does.
Well, there you go.
There's that subscriber.
That's so sweet.
I've tried to get my mom to read the Cosmere books. I really have. But she thinks they're like man books. Which I don't agree with.
I also disagree with that comment.
Which I've said, I've been like, they're not typically geared specifically towards men. So I think you'd be
In
good.
fact,
but she's like, no.
Yeah. Sanderson does have a lot of like really strong female leads. Like,
Right?
Give her a trust.
Yeah.
Maybe I will. Maybe I won't mention it's part of the Cosmere. Let's sneak it in there.
Smart.
Don't want to scare her away.
Exactly. Because if you read
This is
one,
a-
then you got a whole other list of books that you have to go read now.
Exactly. Okay. Before my internet goes out, let's do this.